Education 200, Education 581. Hope all is going well. Sorry, I'm casual again this week, not because I'm same as last week. I ran this morning before I did this. Don't worry, the Freedom runs tomorrow. I'll give you an update. Not that you even remotely care, but you may even hear about it beforehand because there'll probably be a news story about some professor that stopped running and just went underneath a tree and sat for about 3 days trying to recover from trying to run a mile. But enough about me. Um, this week, oh, before I dive into the week, let me do a few announcements. One, again, don't forget to be doing your 10 hours or finishing up. If you're in 581, don't forget there is a research paper. The materials are posted. That's only for 581, not 200. Also, some people have emailed me, don't forget about the praxis. It's not a requirement for this class, but if you've not done praxis, I wouldn't say that you have to do it during this class. I would strongly suggest, though, giving it a crack before you go into 320. It's not, well, it's required for juncture. And I think, it's one of those things where I think it's better to at least give it a shot early on than it is to do it um, towards the end of 320. Let me spit that out. Only because it's just more pressure. And then at that point, you're trying the juncture and you don't have any leeway to retake it if you have to. Actually, two things on this. If you went to the forum that was in late September, which, by the way, I haven't forgotten that there were some people who attended that from here. I have points to give you, and I know I haven't posted them yet. I have that list still, though. Just a little behind. That's the next thing I'm going to come to. But one of the things that a lot of the students who are getting ready to do student teaching said is they wish they had taken praxis earlier, both praxis 1 and when they had to do their praxis 2 type stuff. So, check out the praxis 1 West Virginia requirements. I believe it should be posted up under announcements. I can resend it if anyone ever wants to kind of check it out. But don't forget about that. The other thing is yes, thank you for all your patience with grading. Hopefully there'll be a little bit, by the time you watch this, I'll be mostly caught up, but during midterms, I got a little behind and I've been prepping for advising. That's totally my problem. And I'm not trying to make an excuse, just wanted to give you the heads up. Once you start teaching, you'll probably be a little more sympathetic. Grading is the one thing I always feel like I'm behind on. I try to keep up with it, but it still gets a little bit behind. I'll get behind a week and then I spend the day and make sure I try to get caught back up and such. But again, I feel like I'm talking about myself a lot here. I need to stop that. We're going to actually dive into the week. What we're going to talk about this week, this is someone that actually I mentioned 320. I have a feeling you will get into him in much greater detail in 320, but I still wanted to mention him in our class. And that is a man by the name. He's like Madonna or Cher or someone like that. Most people just call him Piaget. So we're just going to go Piaget. This is Jean Piaget, but Piaget. And he has a constructivism is the philosophy that he's connected to. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. Again, you'll really get into him, I think, more in 320. Dr. Burke does an awesome job with a lot of the theorists and such. But I feel like, he's such a building block that we use a lot of our student-centered learning type approaches to. We connect a lot with him. So I just feel like we need to, we should touch base on him a little bit. A few things that we do this week. There'll be a second Dewey discussion board that's posted. As of right now, I have not read the initial ones. I probably will be getting on that this weekend. I'm recording this on Friday, the October 15th. There'll be a Dewey quote. And then, of course, there should be, do I only have the discussions? Oh, I think I actually cut you a little slack this week. I just noticed that. It's just a discussion board this week. You don't even have to do the flip grids because the flip grids will not be on there. So there's no flip grid this week. I forgot to put that on there. So no flip grid this week. So only thing you have to worry about is the Dewey discussion board, and I'll show you that at the end. But why don't we jump into Piaget? Now, I will warn you, there are a lot of slides here. I'm only going to hit the highlights of Piaget because I think, again, you're going to get them really heavy in 320, but I still feel like I need to talk to you a little bit about him. I would say Dewey is the father of education or American education, but Piaget is definitely he might be more of a global father. I'm not for sure, but he is definitely right there behind Dewey as far as a lot of modern techniques and line of thinking. And I think they're similar in some things too. But anyway, he was Swiss. He actually worked more in the field of psychology than he did actually education. He talked about cognitive development. That's a term you're going to hear. He talks about the stages that we all go through as we're growing up and how we mentally handle things. He was very intrigued by behavior of younger people. And how they developed and why they were developing the way they were. Just a little background. He's really smart. Wrote his first paper at 10. He had a doctorate in natural science, got in the field of psychology, and started to look at different aspects from how children learned. His theory that he is most associated with is constructivism. It's basically, I'm going to just read this word for word so I get it right. The assumption that learning is an active process of construction rather than a passive assimilation of information or memorization. Basically, what he's saying is we learn by doing. It's very Dewey-ish. We like sometimes you have to figure things out. You know what? Most of you might have me for Education 380. I view Education 380 somewhat as a very constructivist, a very Piaget-ish type class, because I introduce a technology. I kind of give an overview of the technology, but it really is up to the students to kind of figure out how it works. And I think that's part of what this theory gets into. Students kind of figure out how to make it work. Now, you have to give directions and you have to kind of give some sort of guidance, but by and large, it's almost like a trial and error type thing. This has a huge influence on schools. His ideas really take off in the 60s and 70s, kind of getting away from that stand and deliver type things of 30s, 40s, and 50s. And his ideas are still used. I think when people think of student-centered learning, Piaget is someone that really comes to the forefront that a lot of people think of. It's the idea that, again, you're going to learn by doing. Very Jewish. Again, just to kind of expand, the constructivism is basically best known for the idea that individuals construct their understanding. The process is a learning constructive process. It's active. It's not just taking information from a teacher or a book. Again, you may actually do it. You may build something. You may analyze something. You're almost, and it says it there, you're almost like a scientist. You're going to form a hypothesis and figure out if it works or if it doesn't. So you're going to construct the learning. He believed that all real learning was a constructive process, whether we are taught or learn on our own. We all kind of form our own ways to construct how we learn, and we all learn different ways. Like I think about a lot of times the way I learned, like I constructed like formulas of color pads and notes and things like that and organized them, and that's how I did it. So this is just how he believes that we form our own learning. We construct it to the way that we can understand it. It's not just, you're not just going to stand up and recite things. Maybe even studying is a little bit of a constructivism type approach in how you actually prefer to study, I think. The disequilibrium, I'm not going to get too much into this, but it's the idea disequilibrium is we want to understand how things work. It's, like learning is a natural thing. Piaget believed that humans were naturally curious. Sometimes, we have to adjust our ideas to make sense of reality. There might be things that we don't understand. He got into this, and this is something I think in 320 they get into a little bit more than I'm going to do today. But sometimes we have to mold our ideas to make it, I don't want to get too philosophical. I think religion could fall into that somewhat, no matter what religion. I'm not picking on any particular religion, but it explains things. We have to assimilate to make it work or understand it. And I think that's the scientist somewhat in Piaget, because scientists are always forming hypotheses and trying to understand why something works. Now, a few things with this. Now, he is a psychologist, he's a scientist, but how does that relate to all this? Piaget comes up with this system where we kind of learn by doing and constructing things, and humans want to learn. He was not actually, I don't know if he saw himself as an educational theorist. He's definitely seen as one now, but as it says there, he's not interested in applying his theory to the school-based questions. And schools, I guess, have taken his idea and kind of mold them. There's another individual we're going to talk about, Howard Gardner. That's something else. Schools really like to use Gardner. I like Gardner, but he wasn't actually trying to sell it as the main thing. But I digress. He says that the American question, that idea of like maybe constructing your learning, that's for the schools. Constructivist educators create an environment which encourages children to construct their own knowledge. It's a very democratic classroom type philosophy too, I think. But according to Piaget, we construct our learning regardless of how it is presented. And that's what I was talking about with the studying and maybe just how you learn. I think sometimes we all see things different ways and how we do it and how you remember and how we might teach ourselves to do it. Um, you know, I'm going to tread carefully here because I was not a math teacher, but sometimes the way we complete math formulas might be a little different. Some people might look at it different ways. My wife and I watch a show called Countdown, or it's 8 out of 10 Countdown. It's like a comedy show in Britain, but they do math problems and there's different ways to get to the answer. And I always think it's interesting because different people think of different ways to construct to get to this number. So for example, they'll give you like 5 numbers and you have to somehow make those numbers work to figure out to be like 443. You'll take those, you'll divide, you'll multiply, you'll add, you can any combination. But it's funny because everyone does it usually a different way. It's interesting, and I think it's kind of a constructivist type philosophy is we want to understand we can get to the answers, we might just do it a different way or construct our way of thinking to a different way. I could be off on that, but that's how I've always interpreted it. The other thing that besides constructivism that Piaget is very connected to is the stages of cognitive development. In all honesty, he's probably more connected to this than he is anything. And that is basically his idea that, children develop according to 4 stages. You'll probably hear this multiple times. You'll probably hear it at workshops when you're there. So Piaget's stages of cognitive development, it's out. It's there. Please, this might be something, you'll definitely see it on the final type thing, but you don't have, I just want you to know that it's there. So Piaget's stages, cognitive development, there's 4 stages. The sensory motor, which is basically birth to 2 years old, pre-operational, 2 to 7. By the way, these aren't hard and fast. It's give or take. These are estimate ages. Concrete operational, 7 to 11, and formal operations, 12 to 15. This is kind of how we're developing. At least this is Piaget's theory of this. Birth to 2, rapid change is seen throughout. The child will, explore the world through senses and motor activity. Early on, a baby can't tell the difference between themselves and the environment. If they can't see something, then it doesn't exist. We begin to understand cause and effect. Can later follow something with their eyes. This is the sensory motor. It's all related to the motor skills developing and starting to kind of understand what's going to happen. If I cry, I might get picked up, or if I cry, I might get fed, or, among other things. Pre-operational stage, this is about 2 to 7. Speech is starting to improve, can imagine the future and reflect on the past. They can identify prior things, develop basic numeration, mathematical abilities. As with earlier, very egocentric, and that's not saying that their ego's out of control. It's just you're thinking about things very much from a me type perspective. They have difficulty sometimes distinguishing between fantasy and reality. They might see cartoon people as real, real figures. Like I think about my son's now basically a teenager, but when he was watching shows, he identified with people that he might have been watching and kind of just talked about them like they were real people. There you go, 2 to 7. That's the pre-operational stage. Conservation of matter, understanding that something doesn't change even though it looks different. Shape is not related to quantity. For an example, are 10 coins set in a long line more than 10 coins in a pile? And that's the kind of the rational type things. Is there less water when it is poured into a bigger container? And that's kind of still getting, just coming back to there. They don't understand at this age, you can't tell the difference or make the connection that they're 2 different things, but they're the same. Sorry, I clumbled through that a little bit, but basically what he's saying is students wouldn't be able to, or individuals in this stage would struggle. I shouldn't say they couldn't do it, but they'll struggle with the idea that a long line of 10 quarters is the same as in a pile. They just, in terms of vastness and shapes and matter type things, they don't always put 2 and 2 together. Concrete operational stage, this is about 7 to 11. Abstract reasoning and ability to generalize from concrete increases. It means they can basically start to understand and rationalize, maybe even control emotions and things like that. They start to understand the conservation of matter, like shapes and sizes. They might be two different shapes, but they might still have the same things in them. I was trying to think of a product that might be different, but well, you know what? I'll just do soda. You know, if you have a 24-ounce, that's also big. Let's say a 12-inch, 12-inch, that's not even right. Let's say 12 ounces of a can and then a 12-inch bottle, which I think they make. They might have trouble determining at that earlier stage, the 2 to 7, the difference. And they might think there's more in the bottle because normally there is more in the bottle. Here, they would know, they would see the 12 and they would understand that they're the same. And their ability to reason and think a little more complex is starting to develop. Formal operational stage, that's from 12 to 15. We begin to think about hypothetical situations. They could say, well, if this happens, what then is going to happen? Or they might test things and see if it works or not. They can start to organize information, reason scientifically. You know, sorry, he's an only kid, so I catch myself talking about him. My son, I actually was thinking about this. He is 12. And I was kind of noticing he was looking for something, so I was in his binder the other day. Now, at 7, 8, his binder looked like a train wreck. I was actually kind of impressed with him the other day. I even told him when I was looking in his binder, it was so organized. He had everything labeled. He knew right where it was. And I actually said something to him. I said, man, Jack, this looks pretty organized. When did you start doing this? He goes, well, it's just easier to find. I kind of get what you're talking about now, where like, if I just know where it is, I'm not stressed out trying to find it and freaking out and da, 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 da. And I was thinking, well, this is kind of formal operational types thinking. He's understanding, you know, organization leads to other things. It's almost like, again, that hypothesis, like, you know, if I'm organized, is that going to cause me to have less stress because I'm not looking for things or worrying if I have it or not? So it's just more complex thinking. But Piaget had 4 stages of cognitive development, and there they are: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operations. He's also associated with constructivism, which again is the idea that learning is an active process of construction rather than a passive assimilation of information or rote memorization. Basically, you're constructing your own learning. You're determining how you're going to do it. So again, this is just base level stuff, but I do want to make sure that I at least name drop this for you. And cute dogs, by the way. I'm not going to get into that. It's the whole thinking, you know, you can think about it in animals too. But anyway, there's a pre-operational stage, and I guess I kind of skipped over it, but that 2 to 7, there's Dennis the Menace. He's an old cartoon, but the inability to understand the conservation of matter, cut it up into a lot of slices, Mom. I'm really hungry. That's the pizza. So if he has the pizza, and it cuts it up into a lot of slices, it seems like more, even though it's not. It's the same size. What is it? What is the analogy they always talk about when you drop a 1,000 pounds of feathers from the sky? Is it more than 1,000 pounds of rock? Well, they're both 1,000 pounds, but you know, it's neither here nor there. Anyway, I'm meandering now. That's Piaget. PowerPoint will be up if you want to check it out. But again, that's a name you just want to keep in the back of your mind. Piaget is definitely, the 4 stages of cognitive development is definitely something I think you'll hear a few times during your studies here at Shepherd. With that being said, I haven't even posted this quote up, but I did find it, so I'm just going to show it right now. The quote this week for the Dewey discussion board, it's right there. It's from Experience in Education. I told you last week, if you're going to remember one thing about Dewey and what he wrote, it's Experience in Education. And there's the quote. It is a teacher's business to be alert to see what attitudes and tendencies are being created. In this direction, he or she must, if he or she is an educator, be able to judge what attitudes are actually conductive to continued growth and what are detrimental. He or she must, in addition, have a sympathetic understanding of individuals, as individuals, which gives him or her, an idea of what is actually going on in the minds of those who are learning. So I'm going to post that up and I want you to kind of determine what you think Dewey is saying there. I think it's self explanatory. I mean, I'll give you my general opinion. It definitely seems to me like, you need to know your students if I was going to sum it up and know what's going on with your students. But again, I don't want to spoil that. I want to see your all's thoughts. So kind of expand a little bit. The Dewey, the same guidelines apply. And that is actually your only assignment this week, which is kind of nice. I like that for you and for me. Um, It'll be up. And that's it, man. I hope everyone is having a good post midterm break. Hope midterms went well. Oh, you know what? I should say this before I sign off. Don't forget to contact your advisor about advising. Um, don't delay. It helps to go talk to your advisor, meet your advisor, because that's the person that's your liaison in the school, at the School of Education. So you do not want to not communicate with that person. At least I'm not, you don't have to contact them every day, but it's someone you should talk to regularly in terms of your movement within the program. Most of you already know this because you've already done 150 and things like that. So with all that being said, I hope everyone has a great weekend since I'm recording this on Friday, and I will talk to you next week.